this is Nick from Income Digs. Welcome to this video tutorial. Today I want to show you just a little trick, relatively quick but kind of advanced as well, following up on some of the external reporting that we've been doing in some of our videos. So if you haven't seen those videos yet, check them out. We have links to them in the description here where we can take data from QuickBooks Online, dump it into a Google Sheet to do some really powerful reporting. Of course, we want to make sure that QuickBooks Online is still the source of truth. We're not going to be changing any data points within our Google Sheet, but we can turn on some really cool dynamic charts and dynamic reporting. So I want to show you just a follow-up on that and a really cool thing that we can do with pivot tables. So as a quick refresher, what we're going to do in QuickBooks is we're going to create a report that gives us all of our transactions. Okay, it's going to give us a huge list of transactions. We certainly want date, product and service in there. Amount needs to be in there as well, and we're going to dump that into a Google Sheet. Okay, and you're going to kind of set this up as in the columns are matching, and so you can kind of copy and paste it in. And then we're going to be doing some calculations on the right of this. So as the information comes in, we can then we can use these calculations to edit as well. Okay, so we can have month, quarter, week ending, product and service, project type, etc. Okay, so once you have your data in there, and again, if you haven't seen that part, check out the other videos we have on there. I'm going to go over that on those videos. So once we have our data set, now we can start to analyze it. And the one thing that's really, really helpful, and we started introducing with our previous videos, is the slicer. So if you take all of the information, so kind of your entire data set, I just selected all of it, and go to data and do add slicer. It's going to add the slicer here. Now I'm actually going to move this. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to move it to a brand new sheet. Okay. And I'm going to paste it here, and there's my slicer. And so what it's asking me to do is select my first column. So slicer is a way to filter without being on the sheet that you're filtering. So I'm going to do, for example, I could do year, okay? And I might want to copy this and paste it. And let's do another one for project. So I got year there, and here I want to do project. Okay, so I have my slicers ready, but I haven't done anything with them yet. Let's call this my dashboard. All right, now I also want a pivot table, all right, because this is gonna really turn on some cool bells and whistles. So I have the same data set. I can actually delete this slicer. I don't need it anymore. Okay, I got this data set here, and now I'll do a pivot table, and that goes to insert. Okay, so my data range, my existing sheet, I want it to go into dashboard. Let's just put it right there. Okay, so I have my pivot table, and if I put my values in there and just put amount in my values, okay, there you can see the total amount of my entire data set. And this is what slicer does. As long as the slicer is indicated that will apply to pivot tables, which it should by default, I can then take this and then filter and say, okay, now just give me 2022. Okay. And that's going to edit my pivot table amount. So it's really powerful. Okay, great. So that's kind of the setup, okay, is that we have our slicers and we have these pivot table. In this case, one, we can create more. What I want to show you is how we can actually calculate off of this, all right? And part of this is the pivot table needs to be in the same sheet as the slicers to be able to be impacted by the slicers. So that's one thing that I didn't know before, and I tried to have the pivot table hidden somewhere else. You can't do that. So you need to have it in the same sheet. So you can either hide the cells that it's referencing, or what I like to do is I just kind of add a bunch, and I have my pivot tables at the bottom. Okay, and when I say at the bottom, I'm going to be creating a dashboard type thing here. Okay, where I can analyze my information on one sheet. Okay, and so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up my pivot table such that I have my amount, but I want my columns to be the type of transactions. So I have cost of goods sold, I have labor, and I have revenue. Okay. Now, right now it's giving me the total of those things, which isn't really too applicable because it's actually going to be revenue minus cost of goods sold minus labor is going to give me my profit. So this whole total situation doesn't really help me that much. I don't want the total here. I don't need it. Okay. I'm going to turn that off, but I'm going to reference this somewhere else. So what I can do with this is I can put in here, let's say that I want to calculate for whatever is applying to my slicer. I want to know what's the revenue, what's the cost of goods sold, what's the labor, and then what's the gross profit. Okay, so how can I get that information from my pivot table? This is something that didn't previously exist within Google Sheets. It existed with Excel, but not Google Sheets, all right? And by the way, this is a dashboard, so let's make this look really cool, right? Let's start to format it a little bit and just make it look a little bit more like a report that you can send to your team. All right, let's just do white, and let's go bold. Let's go with a different font. Let's go with 20, okay. And maybe I'm going to turn off my grid lines. That could be something we want to do too. Okay, cool. So I want to get this. Now, sometimes I've been noticing when I'm working with slicers and pivot tables, notice that the columns start to look weird. I don't really know why that is, but it fixes itself with a quick refresh. Cool thing about Google Sheets is it automatically saves. You don't have to click the save button. Everything's fine. So you can click the refresh button and you're going to be good to go. All right. Just a little annoying thing that I noticed as you're working, like I was working really fast to adjust that formatting. It seems like Google Sheets isn't keeping up, but I'm guessing it's a glitch that they'll solve. So this is where the magic comes in that I want to get a formula that references a pivot table. And again, this used to not be possible, okay? And so we actually have a formula available to us called get pivot data. Okay, so if we start to type that, you're gonna see the arguments come up. So I'm gonna do equals, and it's gonna be get pivot data, and you can see it comes up. And so what it's asking you for is what value do you want to go in here? And this is where we actually have to be very specific to what it is, okay? And it shows you, I wanna get this amount here, okay? So it's going to be the words sum of amount in quotes, okay? So that's the value I want to get. And then it's asking me, where is this pivot table? And all I have to do here is I just have to click on any cell within the pivot table. So I'm going to click the top left. I just kind of always try to do that. All right, now it's asking me, okay, we're going to get the sum of amount, but do you want to get the total or do you want to get it by your columns? And that's exactly what I want to do, okay, where my type, so I'm going to say give it to me where my type equals, in this case I want it to equal revenue. Okay, and there is my total. All right, so that worked just fine. And I'm going to take my decimals off of this. Remember, this is a dashboard. I don't care about cents. Now, why is it 1 million, whereas back before we saw it at like 168? It's because my filters just reset. So all I got to do if I want to see it by this year, let's say like 2022, go ahead and do that, and it's going to filter down. That's exactly what I want. It's really, really neat. All right, so now let's talk about how to make this more dynamic. First of all, I want to make this centered. So I'm going to put the center there. And when I say more dynamic, it's I want to be able to click and drag this down so I don't have to rewrite the formula again and again. The first thing I want to do is I want to lock in my reference to the pivot table with my $sign. So if I pull this down, you're going to notice that it goes to A26. Well, what happens if I can, now A26 happens to be within the pivot table, but what happens if I move it down by a couple? It's not going to find it. Okay, so we want to lock in that reference. So we're going to do that with our $signs. So $sign on the column, $sign on the row. Okay, so actually let's do it. Let's do it at the source here. Okay, so I'm locking in my pivot table. Now I also, when I click and drag this down, I want it to not, I want this cell to go to COGS and not revenue. So what I can do is instead of typing revenue here, like I'm doing, instead of that, I can just reference this cell. As long as it's spelled the same, it's going to work. Now, what if I didn't spell revenue correctly? Okay, that's not going to work, right? So we got to make sure that how we're spelling it here matches how it shows up in our pivot table. And now when I drag this down, now I don't really need to lock this in because I do want the row to go to E2. I could lock in the column, although it really, I'm not going to be moving things. It won't really impact anything. So I can click and drag this down. And now it shows me my cost of goods sold. I can bring this down. It's going to show me my labor. Awesome, right? Now, gross profit, I don't need the pivot table to tell me that. I know what the calculation for gross profit is. It's the revenue minus the sum of the cost of goods sold and the labor. So let's just put that formula in, nice and simple, equals. And I'm going to grab the revenue. I'm going to do minus, and then I'm going to do sum of these two items right here. and there is my net profit. Okay, and of course we can do percentages as well. So I can say, give me the percentage of cost of goods sold to my revenue. All right, let's do that as a percentage. Let's actually, before I do the percentage, let's do the format painter to make this look the same. And now it's a dollar sign, because this is a dollar sign. I can simply move it to a percentage. And again, I don't need all those decimals. Let's take a couple out. All right, now I want to bring this down. Again, I need to lock in my row, because as I drag this, I want it to be 28,000 divided by the revenue. So I have to lock in row number 1. And as I drag it down, it's going to give me that exact amount. Maybe I'll get 1 decimal point would look good. Okay. Now, what's neat about this is I can, let's say, all the years, let's see everything. Okay, so this could be your entire business, right? Or I can then filter by specific project. So I can say, give me this one project right here. Let me see how I'm doing on that project. Okay, great. That's how I'm doing on that project. How about 2 projects? Maybe there's a couple projects that are similar to each other, and I want to see how am I doing on those together. Okay, between those 2 projects, I have a revenue of 182, cost of goods sold is 64, labor, gross profit. So between those 2 projects, my net profit is 50%. Okay, I can turn on a bunch of them. Okay, and everything's going to update. Why is it all updating? Because this pivot table is updating with the slicer. Very, very powerful. Okay, so we're getting a little bit more advanced in that we're referencing that pivot table. Okay, the other thing I want to show you is in the previous video, I was doing my charts based on the data set. We can actually do our charts based on pivot tables as well. Now, Excel has something called pivot charts. Google Sheets does not have that, but we can still make charts off of our pivots. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this pivot table. And when you do that, it's going to keep the reference the same. And now there's something to remember when you're doing a dashboard. Be careful about where you put these, in that if this were to ever grow, let's say if I were to put rows on this, it's going to grow here and change this. I don't want that to happen, but I also know it won't happen. This pivot table is locked in. There's nothing else I'm going to do with it, so I can keep it right there. And the reason I have all this white space is because I'm going to plant a chart right here into my dashboard. So what I might want to do here is we have all these products and services, or they're really your cost categories, okay? So I might want to see how much am I spending by cost category for the projects that are in the slicer. And so the first thing I want to do with this pivot table here is I want to take revenue out. I'm not interested in revenue for this calculation. So I'm going to bring type into my filters, and I'm going to say, give me just the cost of goods sold and give me just the labor, and I don't want the revenue. And you know what? I don't want to show the breakup between cost of goods sold and labor. I just want the total. All right, so I'm going to get rid of the type there. Okay, and that's how much I'm spending in cost of goods sold and labor. But I might want to see this by my product and service. Okay, so I can see the different categories that I'm spending in. And maybe what I want to do with my chart is show myself what are the top 5 or 10 categories, okay? And if I wanted to do that, I can order this descending by amount. All right, and it's going to give me my top categories. And then what I could do with this is I can take my, let's say 1, 2, and it's counting over here. Okay, so let's do my top 10. All right, so I'm going to take my top 10 there, and I'm going to insert a chart. And Google is guessing that I want to do a pie chart. It's correct. That is what I want to do. And let's customize this a little bit. I tend to like my pie chart to have a donut hole. Okay. And maybe I'm going to change the name of this. I'm going to say top 10 spending categories. All right. Now, I might not care about the percentages because guess what? This isn't the total spending. So I might want to turn off those labels. So let's see if I can do that. The slice label, I want it to be, oh, that's the value in that. Okay, got it. And then by the way, what the other thing we can do is we can take the top one and we can separate it out. This is something I've been doing too. Now, I don't know if that makes sense for you, but just so you're aware it's possible. I kind of like to keep it at 0. Then you can edit your individual slices as well. Notice that the names come up here, but as soon as those names change, let's say I switch projects. Okay, let's say that I just go to this project here. My names are going to change. Okay, it's going to be dynamic. That's what's really cool about this. Everything that changes down here gets reflected in my chart. Okay, so I can do, give me these 2 projects. These are similar and I want to see how we're doing. Not only does my revenue, cost of goods sold, labor update, but also my pie chart. Okay, now maybe this is too many categories. Maybe I just want to see my top 5, and that's fine. Why don't I just change my range to be, instead of B40, I'm going to just go to B45. All right, and I've just reduced that down. Okay, because it's going to just give me my top spending there. Okay, so that is looking good. Let's just see here. Okay. Good. Just seeing if there's anything else we should be looking at here, but I think we're good on everything. Okay, so great. I have that chart. The other chart that I might be interested in is maybe I want to see my revenue, cost of goods sold, labor, net profit, and I want to see that by project. Maybe I want to compare a bunch, okay? So I can take another one of these, again, just copy and paste these pivot tables. I'm going to copy and paste this one over here. Okay, and here what I want to do is I want to put projects down my rows. Okay, so I want to be able to see, there's my project, cost of goods sold, labor, revenue. Okay, now I might want to see this in a certain order. I actually do want to see revenue first. So I'm going to sort my type descending, okay, so that I get revenue over there. And what we can do with this is we can just do a formula off to the side. By the way, we're going to get rid of grand total. That's another thing with these charts. Get rid of your grand totals because we don't want those aggregates. And off to the side, what I can do with this is I can calculate my net profit. So I can put net profit right here. Now I know this won't grow to the right. Okay, so this is going to be, now here I'm not doing a pivot table reference. I'm literally just grabbing this cell. All right, give me my revenue minus the sum of my labor and cost of goods sold. So my net profit for this project is this $956, okay? I could also do my cost of goods sold percentage, or I'm sorry, my profit percentage. Okay, so I can do profit percentage here where I'm taking this value and I'm dividing it by my revenue. Okay, and let's format this because I want it to show up in the chart. All right, and I can click and drag this down. Now here's the important part. This will grow, right? If I were to include more projects, let's say I included all projects. Okay, let's say I had all those projects. Now those calculations don't show up here. So what you need to do is you need to make sure this is copied down far enough. And so what you should do, the other thing is if I bring it down this far, nothing's going to be there. So what I do with these formulas is I do a if blank, put nothing. Okay, so very simple formula that I'm going to put in here. If this field here equals blank, then I want to deliver blank. If not, do the calculation that I had. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing here. So if this field here equals blank, deliver blank. If not, I want to do my calculation. All right, and then what I can do with this whole entire thing is I can bring it down way further than I ever need to go. Okay, and now what we can do with this whole entire situation is I can put this all into a chart. So I can grab more than I need right now because the chart will only display what I have, and I can insert a chart And what I'm going to do for this, I'm going to leave it as a bar for now. And Google Sheets is guessing that I want to do a bar chart. I'm going to bring it up here. Okay, let's get rid of this for a second. So what I'm seeing is there's my revenue, my labor, my cost of goods sold, my net profit, and then my profit percentage. Now the problem here is an axis issue. My profit percentage is a percentage and it shows up way lower. So what we need to do with this is a couple things. First, we need to get the profit percentage on a different axis, okay? So if I go into my chart and I go to customize, let's go to series, and I'm going to specifically call out my profit percentage, and here I'm going to indicate that I want it to go on a different axis because it's in a completely different range than those dollar values, okay? So when I do that, you can see the percentage here, that's my profit percentage, okay? So it's kind of starting to take shape. The other thing I like to do with this, though, is to separate out my percentage to a different chart type altogether, meaning like a line, okay? So again, I can go to customize, I can go to series here, and my profit percentage, I can, actually what I have to do first I have to set it up as instead of just a column, I have to do a combo, okay? So I'm gonna do that, all right? So I got my combo set, but now I have to tell Google Sheets that the revenue, I want it to be columns. Great. Labor, I also want it to be columns. Cost of goods sold, I also want it to be columns. Net profit, same thing. And my profit percentage, I want to be a line. Perfect. The other thing I like to do with this as well is maybe make this a dash line with a big circle, okay? And I like to turn on the data labels for this as well. So I hit data labels right there. Great. All right, so now on my chart, I can see for each project what my profit percentage is, okay? And I see how that compares revenue, labor, etc. And again, if I were to say, hey, this chart is too many projects for me, I don't want to see all of those, I can just grab these three and it's going to dynamically update for me. All right, so a few things that we learned today. One is our get pivot table calculation, get pivot data calculation. The other is that we can create dynamic charts by having our pivot tables down here and having our charts up above. And again, if this is your dashboard, just kind of do this with it so that I don't even need to see the pivot tables. And in fact, I think, let's test this. Can we just hide this? I don't know. Let's see. Okay, so I believe we can, if we click include hidden and filtered data. Yep. So we can hide it and we just have to tell the chart to include hidden and filtered data. And so you and your users don't have to look at all the data that's driving it, okay? We can just simply do our filters here and everything will update automatically. All right, so some tips and tricks within Google Sheets. I'm telling you right now that Google Sheets is way better than Microsoft Excel these days, mostly because we can collaborate, right? We can have a link to the Google Sheet, and now it's so powerful we can do all the stuff that used to only be available in Microsoft Excel. So if you need to analyze your information in a more dynamic way, if you need to see some better charts and reporting, you can bring your information out of QuickBooks Online, bring it into Google Sheets, and create this cool little dashboard. Use slicers, use pivot tables, and really help to turn on some cool analytics for your business. This is kind of advanced. Let me know if you have questions or other thoughts. If you want to do something different, I can probably demonstrate how we can do that within Google Sheets, all right? As always, if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. Visit us at incomedigs.com. We have tons of free resources available. We talk about a lot of this stuff as well in our course, Real Estate Accounting Bootcamp. We talk about the advanced techniques, and this is certainly one of them, all right? So looking forward to hearing your comments on this, and until next time, see you on the next video.